Hello.
Hello.
What's your name?
Joanne Darby.
Hello, Joanne Darby. And where do you grow up? Where did you grow up and where do you live now?
I grew up in Montreal, Canada, and that's my main house. We have another property in Costa Rica, which Darby loves very much during the winter time mostly. But this is our home is still Montreal, Canada.
Beautiful. And what has been the main contemplative or spiritual practice of your life?
Well, when I started to travel, I was a traveler naturally, but when I started to discover the spiritual part, then my first focus was a bit of the study of Buddhism, but then I got more into the Hindu philosophy, and that's been the background of my life basically.
So like the Buddhist Hindu philosophical process?
Very, very similar. It's the same basically. Buddhists are more structured. Hinduism is like so wild and so vast. There's a non-stop learning from the Hindu literature and philosophy.
Do you mind me asking, did you go travelling to discover spirituality, or did you just go travelling?
No, when I started my journey, I was 26 years old.
What year was that, if you don't mind me asking?
That was 76. And I was definitely a traveler. I gave all my money to my mother and I said, I'm going to be traveling for 6 months, so if I need money, send it to me. And my travels lasted 8 years, basically. But the beginning, yes, for the first couple of years, I did so many countries in Europe and Africa and India, Sri Lanka, Thailand, and all these countries for I would say about 2 years. And it's in Bali that I said, maybe I've have enough, I've seen enough. But I read that book, Siddhartha by Hermann Hesse, and I realized, wow, there's a spiritual side of myself that I've never really looked into, was there, but never tried to go deeper and try to find what's the purpose of life and why we're here and what life is all about. So I went back to Dharamsala and studied when the Dalai Lama was there at that time. So I studied with some Lama for a few months, and then I learned a lot. There was an interesting day because one day I was reading about death, that death can happen to you anytime. And there was a major earthquake happening at that same moment. My room started to collapse a bit and the monks got us out of the place. Many people died. And I'm like, wow, this never left me because death is always there. We never know, but you have to be ready.
Do you feel that was, I've got this lovely image of, just going back on your what you shared there, this lovely image of you sitting in Bali, reading Siddhartha, and it being like a moment going, I'm away, I can follow this.
Yes, because when I was reading the story of the man and seeing that his path was spiritual life, then he went into a mundane life, and then later he got tired of it, He got tired of all this abundance, of all this fancy living, and then he started to go back into searching, into finding God or his own self. So.
Yeah, and then again, so you were able to, because you were away and you were in that part of the world where you could start to look at yourself and go to places where it's like that. You were able to really follow that.
Oh yeah, because when you're in India, the country is so ingrained with spirituality, you can't, it's there, it's in you, you're part of it. And you have time, of course, you don't work, so you have time, you don't have a family, you have time to analyze yourself and go into deeper go into meditation if you can, and other aspect of the search. You can search in the inside.
And then the same, and again, this moment when you were like at the earthquake.
Yes.
Another moment about death where you go, oh, it's fleeting, right? That can almost send you deeper, right?
Yes, and it never left me, because you never know. You hear of people getting car accident or anything, and if your spirit is not in the right space, your karma is not so good, you know, you never know. So it's a very interesting experience.
So how did that experience compel you then after the earthquake? Where did you go? What did you do next?
Oh yes, because my health was starting to go down, because there is not such a healthy place to live, and there was monsoon coming also. So I saw somebody on a roof doing some asanas, and I said, "Where did you learn? What did you do? What are you doing?" And he said, "Oh, I learned this in Pondicherry, in the south of India, in an ashram called Gitananda." And he says, "They're starting a course now, very shortly." I said, "Oh, maybe that's the time to go." And so I went down there, and I stayed 6 months. It's like the whole kit of yoga, you know, a bit of asana, a bit of chanting, but it was a lot of shat karma, some fasting, everything was there. But it was really a deep cleansing for me, especially after so many years of traveling. So then I got even more deeper in the philosophy of Hindu philosophy. And when the course finished, I went to, one of the teachers was Vishwanath, which was Pattabhi Jois' nephew, which lived in Bangalore. And I went there and studied with him for a couple of weeks, and he was teaching me every day only Surya Namaskar. That's all I did for 2 weeks. And then he said, "Go and meet my uncle in Mysore." So that's when I met Pattabhi Jois. I went there, and he says, "Come tomorrow for the class." And that's when I met Darby. Darby was there for a week before me, and some French students, very small group, four or five students. And I said, "Oh, I might try this for a month or so, see what happens." And then I really got into it, you know. And so I learned, because Pattabhi Jois at that time had very few students, so he was teaching us very quickly, and my body was quite supple because of all the cleansing, so I could just move on. For me, it was kind of no pain, just kept on learning new postures. Of course, it was very, very interesting. And Darby was there, and I kind of, we got friends. And then Pattabhi Jois, one time Darby left, and when he came back, he comes to me. Darby had needed a place to stay, so he comes to me. He says, "Darby's a good man, and Darby needs a home to place to stay." And I was living in Pattabhi Jois's back house. So he says, "Oh, Darby can live with you." And I'm like, "Oh," you know, I didn't expect this, but it happened, and we were friends already. And then from being friends, we became a lover, and that's what happened, and he married us. And so this story of us started in Mysore in 1979 or 80.
It sounds like when you're traveling, if I'm reminded about going traveling, you're on this amazing process, just seeing what happens.
Yes, you live for the moment, you know, things change. You're always, that's why I love traveling. You meet new people, you see new mentality, you absorb everything that is around you, you know. It's like we're not, it's so beautiful to be able to travel. I mean, it's quite a blessing.
You had those, it sounds like those years when you were in India, traveling in Asia, they were really focused on spiritual practice though.
Oh yeah. Even with Pattabhi Jois, we were always reading the Mahabharata, Ramayana, the Bhagavad Gita. We were constantly reading those scriptures. So eventually it rubs into us, you know. You can't deny it.
What did you, if you could expand on like how the philosophy like helped you understand yourself? What would you say?
You know, because books like Ramayana and all this, it's like, or Mahabharata, every aspect of life is described and how the reaction of the people towards that event, you know. Some are good reactions, some are bad reaction, and you learn from that, oh, this is how you react to that type of reaction, to situation. And I think it brings us a lot of knowledge about life and how to accept what happens and how to react to different situations. We also, in our new practice of Kriya Yoga, we read the Bhagavad Gita every day, one chapter every day. And even that, every day you repeat. I mean, how many times I've read the Bhagavad Gita? It's been over 10 years, every day, one chapter. You know, you read it one day, you read something, next day is a little different, but there's always something out of those scriptures that come.
And I suppose because you're reading the same thing over and over again, each time you read it, it chisels in a little bit differently,
Yes,
a little bit deeper.
yes, definitely. Depending on your opening of your mind, you know, the mind, you know, our Kriya teacher always says, you know, try to open your consciousness, you know, our consciousness is very limited. And with meditation and with practice, you try to open it and you see more and more deeper into yourself and the universe.
So what was the movement out of India, Asia, and into some kind of more normal life like?
Whew, that's, you know, when I had my second child, my mother said, that's enough, you have no more money, you come back home. So we had to go back to Canada, and we needed to work, look after family, and that was a challenge. You know, living in India, learning yoga, you know, it's, oh, wow, this is life, you know, you don't want to do anything else. But when you go back in the West, in a total different environment, we were vegetarian, my family's like, what are you doing, you know? We were, don't forget, it's in the 80s. People were not vegetarian in those days, practicing yoga. What is this, you know? And we had to work to financially. And one of the teachers, like Yukteswar, always says, keep your spirit in the sky, but keep your 2 feet on the ground, you know? You cannot just float around the world. You have to work and make a living for you and your family. So we both had to work, which is a very difficult time, but on the other hand, taught us a lot about.
What was difficult about it?
You're going back to normal life. Stress of working every day. We were not very little practicing yoga because we had not the time and the energy. And meeting people that were not into the yoga world, you know, there's some good people, but some, you know, so we were like strangers in our own country.
Did you let go of the whole of like study, which is like reading as well? Like
well, I had very little time. I had 2 children, and when I 42, I got a 3rd child, so I had 3 children to look after, and that's a karma, that's a dharma in itself, you know. But I always kept the Buddhist teaching of compassion, you know, that stayed always with me, you know, the kindness, love, that kind of teaching always stayed very deep in me. So I tried, you know, you try to understand and be compassionate to people who don't understand who you are and what you're doing.
And I suppose compassionate for yourself as well, because of all of the kind of changes that are happening for you, right?
Yes, it was difficult time. And in fact, when I had the opportunity, when we met Pattabhi Jois in New York in 2000, And he told us, oh, if you want a certification, come back to India. It was like an impossible. It was like not possible to go. We didn't have the finance. But we managed to get the money. And when we went back to India, there was no way. I told Darby, I don't want to come back. And my oldest son was with us, and he wanted to study yoga. So and the universe sent me an inheritance from my aunt that same time I was there. So I said, that's it. I can stay in Mysore.
It's the sign.
So that's what the universe does to you, you know. If you're meant to go do something that is for you, for your path, the universe will send it to you, like from nowhere. It's always
so that gave you, it almost like the universe said, no, you have to you can practice again now. You've done this part.
Yeah.
Now here's something back for you again.
So I managed to stay 5 years, traveling to work. And Darby came to India all the time, and I went to Canada when my son had the summer holiday, my youngest one. And this way we met people from around the world, you know. So afterwards, when I came back to Canada, we started to teach internationally because we met a lot of international people. And
amazing. So you traveled for 5 years from 2001?
Not travel. I stayed in India 5 years with Pattabhi Jois, and that was the time when he moved from Lakshmipuram. The first year was still in Lakshmipuram with a small group of 12 students in a room, to Gokulam when there was able to put 50, 60 people. So I was there during that transition.
And Darby was in
We would come like a couple months a year, and Mia would go to Canada a couple months a year, and we did that for about 5 years.
How old were the children?
My young one was 9 years old at that time, and he went to Indian school for 5 years. He was doing great. It was interesting for him.
Amazing.
Yeah, but when he came back to Canada, we went to college and university, so he did well.
This is really powerful. So I love this fact that you realised you needed to be there, so you just decided to stay.
Yeah, just no way. There was like, I was so happy to be in Mysore.
And also that Darby supported you.
This is also a blessing. I mean, he's a good man. He was, I'm sure some husband would have said, no way you're coming back home, but he supported me, and also he was able to come, and for him too was a good opportunity to come in Mysore all the time, yeah.
So it sounded like, so what happened after that? What happened after those 5 years?
Well, I went back home because finance were a bit not so good again. My heritage was over. So I went back to work for a couple of years, and then Darby started to travel, and he wanted me to travel with him. So my boss said, you want to travel, you want to work, you know? So I said, oh, I want to travel with Darby. So then we managed. We've been traveling together since 2000, maybe 11 or something like that. 9 even.
And how's that been? When you look at that travelling now that you're doing now compared to what you were doing from 79 to 84, and you've got that big chunk in between, how does it feel now to be doing the travelling and the work and the teaching and stuff?
We, in 2010 or 2011, we met our Kriya yoga teacher. That was after Pattabhi Jois died. Because when Pattabhi Jois was alive, he was kind of our guide, our guru. And when he died, we said, we maybe need something more spiritual, more deeper than just asana. Even if you read, you just don't get it, you know. So when we met that teacher, it's been a whole new journey. He brought us an old Kriya yoga, it's called, and he brought us a whole new dimension. We can do 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours a day. It's up to us. He wants us to increase, but of course there's time factor and other things. But this is our main practice now. Because at 75, you know, you don't feel like doing advanced series, no way. You know, you're happy with just breathing in your practice, slow practice, mostly focused on the breath. I mean, I still have the flexibility, but I don't have that strength to keep going for hours. So we do this Kriya yoga practice for 1-2 hours a day, and plus the asana. So this kind of enough, and this is, and also reading the Gita and other scriptures. So this is kind of at this time in my life, I'm very happy. I'm very feel blessed and very grateful for what happened in my life, and I can feel still that with these practice, it's just growing. It's like a seed that is planted, and it's growing. You cannot hope for enlightenment overnight. It's something that grows, and when you have to purify your soul, and it comes with time and with when the universe thinks you're ready for it.
Beautiful. Thank you, Joanne. So if you would share one thing that you've discovered about yourself all the way through that period of time, from 1979 to now, if you could share one thing that you've learned about yourself, what would you say?
Just to be grateful for what happens to you all the time, and also, things are sometimes good, sometimes are not so good, but you have to always look at the positive side, and the present is always the most important, because a lot of people live in the past or in the future, but what's happening now, that's what will guide your future, and always keep a very loving, positive attitude towards life, and be always grateful and thankful for what the universe gives us.
Thank you, Joanne. That was beautiful.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.